So the New York State Archives, which is honoring you tonight, is obviously an institution housing astonishing array of centuries of records of New York, and you're an archives-driven person in your years of research. But you talked a lot in your new book about family history and what you learned from your grandparents and what you wish you had asked your grandparents. Just tell us a little bit about family history.
I knew my family history pretty well, as far as African American people can know the history. There, people talk about the 1870 block because that's when blacks come in, into the census in large numbers. You can look back, and if you can have plantation records and family history and combine those things, you can find people past that time period. You can find birth. But it was good to go back. I found my great great grandfather's voter registration. The voter registration is in Madison, Texas. And I remember going with my grandmother and her sister one time to visit relatives in Madison when I was a little girl. And I made no connection to that at all. But I got reconnected to it through doing this research with this book. I think family history, oral history is important, but it's even more important when you can hook it up to the archive.
You've crystallized the I think for us what I found this fascinating three-part nature of your new book, which is that it combines this compelling family story and memoir aspect with a history of Texas, but it also is about Juneteenth, hence the title. And just so everyone knows, who may not have read your New Yorker piece or have not gotten to the book yet, tell us about Juneteenth.
Juneteenth is the 1st of June 1865, when Gordon Granger, United States Army general, came to Galveston. Galveston figures in every chapter of this book. Gordon Granger comes to Galveston and he announces that slavery is over in Texas. And this is 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. But the the Army of the Trans-Mississippi had continued to fight even after Appomattox, and finally surrendered at the beginning of June in 1865. And that's why Granger was told to go to Galveston and make this announcement. And he does this right off the bat. When he gets there, issues this General Order 3 that says slavery is over. And he says something else that's really important. He says, and I'm paraphrasing here, essentially that the former enslaved people would occupy the same plane of equality with whites, with their former masters, which was not something he had to say. He could have easily just said, slavery's over, that's done, go on your merry way. So there was celebration. This was called the Jubilee. It was first called Emancipation Day when the people commemorated it. But that first time, there was violence against the people who celebrated. There are instances where people who celebrated were whipped or worse because of it. So there's a combination of joy and a combination of hostility, because they had to figure out, how these people how were they going to live together after having occupied the relationship of enslaver and enslaved.
So how are you feeling in terms of you're feeling proprietary, but also the prospect of Juneteenth being increasingly a major holiday?
There's a certain amount of path dependency here. If most states, 47 states, are celebrating this already, I think it's important to say that this really marks the end of the sort of organized Confederate effort. At this point, this is a result of the end of their defeat. And I think it's important that African American soldiers were involved in this and fighting for their freedom, for the freedom of their people. So I think it would be fitting to have it as a national holiday, explaining the part about the law, but the end of the organized armed struggle over slavery, I think, is really important, and what comes immediately after that. So to my mind, it's not saying, yeah, everything was great after all of this, because it obviously wasn't, but to say we recognize the joy that these people felt after they had endured what they endured. And I think it's important to do that.
Looking at the wave of voter suppression laws that have been enacted in Georgia and Texas and were proposed and enacted all over the country. I was thinking the other day about what Theodore Parker and Dr. King and President Obama all said in one form or another, that the arc of history bends ultimately towards justice. Are you feeling optimistic about that hope these days?
I mean, the arc bends towards justice sometimes, and sometimes it bends towards injustice. I don't think history has a destination. People have to be actors. And I am heartened by the fact that so many people came out to vote. In a democratic republic, that's what it's supposed to be about. Eligible people should be able to vote, and it shouldn't be difficult to do. And when it's difficult to do, that makes you think about what is going on. I mean, what are the values of the people who are trying to stop people from voting in a republic?
Annette, thank you. Thanks for all you've done to open eyes and help us find a path not only to understanding the past, but to discovering a more equitable future for all of us. It's an
Thank
honor to know you, and I hope to see you soon.